All right, so let me get to sharing this and we'll get going. So first, kind of thanks everyone for joining. My name is Andy Cabasso and I'm a co-founder at Postaga. And today we are going to talk all about email deliverability and making sure that your emails land in people's inboxes. So with that, let me share my screen and we will get going. A little bit of housekeeping as we get started. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to use the Q&A section module of this Zoom webinar thing or the chat, and I'll make sure that we get to those questions. And let's check this out. So you should see a screen now that says land your emails in the inbox. If I could get just a raise hand or thumbs up from someone that it works, awesome, thank you. All right, and if you don't see the screen, then I'd recommend just refreshing your browser and you should see that. So let's talk about landing your emails in the inbox. My name is Andy Cabasso. As I mentioned, I'm a co-founder at Postaga and Boxword. Day to day, besides running these businesses, I manage an outreach team. And so I'm thinking about cold outreach pretty much 24/7. I'm thinking about outreach strategies, effectiveness, deliverability, all those fun things. And so today I'm going to be talking about deliverability best practices, how we can better ensure that our outreach emails are going to reach people's inboxes and not land in their spam folders. I have seen all sides of the equation here. I've seen amazing deliverability and open rates and reply rates. I've also seen what happens when you have a burned email or one that has very low deliverability and open rates. So I'm excited to get more into the nitty gritty of that. So kind of different components that we're going to talk about is my agenda I got wrong, but we're going to be talking about a few different things. We're going to be talking about basically the setup that you need for good deliverability. We're going to be talking about email warmup, and we're also going to be talking about kind of best practices overall, or things that can kind of contribute when you're running your outreach campaigns to better deliverability, and things like email cadence and spin tax and things like that. But first, let's get started with just a quick poll question to kind of survey the audience. I'm going to open this up in a second, but the question is, are you currently doing any cold outreach? And the options are yes, no, or not now, but I have in the past. And so the poll is now open. If you could please drop in your answers, and we'll close this in a minute here. All right. Let's close this out now. And the answer is yes, no. Yes is 33%, no is 20%, and not now, but I have in the past is 47%. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That is kind of good for us to know where kind of everybody is at and what their experience is. So first, we're going to get into kind of email deliverability overall. And well, you know, whether or not you're an expert in deliverability, and we're going to cover a little bit of the basics about like things that you should be doing on whenever you are starting to do outreach, to things that you should be doing kind of like on an ongoing basis to better improve your deliverability. But to get started, we're going to talk about what is deliverability and what's the point of this. So basically, email deliverability is the kind of the rate at which your emails make it to your recipient's inbox versus them bouncing or getting rejected or hitting spam folders. Things that can contribute to deliverability include, well, one is bounce rate. So like when the emails that you're reaching out to are just bad or dead emails that aren't working, or based on the recipient's email service provider deciding whether or not your email should be going into that person's inbox or spam folder. Low deliverability obviously is not a good thing because it means that your cold outreach pitches are not reaching people's inboxes, and it's kind of wasting some of your efforts from prospecting contacts, coming up with unique pitches for them. And if it winds up in the spam folder, then chances are they're not going to see. So that's why we really, really care about deliverability. Like I've seen email addresses that get like an open rate of, you can see different open rates of like someone with like bad deliverability, you might see an open rate of like 20%. With good deliverability and good targeting of your outreach campaigns, you can see, open rates of 60 to 80%. And the higher your open rate, the more, the more people that are actually seeing your message, the more likely that you get a win, whatever you define that as from your outreach campaign, whether it's a sales lead or a backlink or a guest post or an affiliate or PR coverage or what have you. So how do we improve deliverability? There are a few things that you can do at the outset of when you're setting up your email that you're using for your outreach campaigns. There are some outreach practices, best practices overall when you're running outreach campaigns. And there's also email warmup. And we're going to talk about each of these in depth. And thanks, Robert, for the comment. This is not coffee, it is tea. All right, so let's talk about email setup. And this is going to be interesting if this is like your probably first foray into doing cold outreach. And some of these things you may not know. So I'm kind of happy to share some of these. A question that I get a lot running Postaga is, can I or should I use my regular everyday business email address for cold outreach? What do you think? Yes or no? Michael very strongly says no. Robert says yes for authenticity. Interesting. All right. So my answer is usually no. If in particular, because let's say that you're using your regular domain for outreach and you encounter low deliverability because some of your recipients are marking your email as spam, or because you bought a list and that list's email addresses are not all working and you didn't clean up or verify that list and you're seeing a high bounce rate there. So now email service providers are going to think, oh, well, you're emailing a ton of people and your emails are bouncing. This must be a purchased list or some kind of cold outreach thing, because most people, when they send business emails to their colleagues, they're not seeing nearly this high a bounce rate. And if you end up having, having that bad deliverability on your main domain, that really sets you in a bad spot because your regular everyday emails now to your colleagues are going to wind up in spam folders. And I have heard of that happening to people, and trying to dig your way out after having after seeing like low deliverability, but in particular trying to dig your way out if you end up in the worst case scenario where you end up on a spam list is extraordinarily difficult. So as a best practice, what I recommend is either using an alternate domain or even a subdomain. Now, the subdomain thing is interesting because it's not the thing that a lot of people necessarily recommend, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about it further. But using an alternate domain or a subdomain, it protects your main domain's sender reputation. So in case worst case scenario happens and your emails are all going to spam from this domain, it won't affect your everyday day-to-day business. But to Robert's point about authenticity, well, what do I, if I'm sending an email at another domain or a Gmail when my business domain is this, is it going to look suspicious or something like that? So what I what I do often, I kind of experiment with a variety of things. I use alternate domains. I also use subdomains. Like if I send an outreach email from m.postaga.com or outreach.postaga.com, it still has my main domain there. So if someone visits my domain, it'll get them to my website. But if I buy an alternate domain like postaga.net and all my outreach emails are going from at postaga.net, what I'll do is set a redirect in my DNS, my Cloudflare or Namecheap or GoDaddy account, so that if someone visits that alternate domain, which can happen if someone sees oh, I got an email from Andy at postaga.net, let me visit this postaga.net site real quick, it'll redirect them to my main postaga.com domain. So I recommend using an alternate domain or a subdomain. This way you can kind of protect your main email. For a subdomain, so Michael points out a subdomain can be an issue if it's hosted on the same IP. That I guess, yeah, that is correct. Yeah, it kind of depends on what email provider that you're using with the subdomain and all of that. But when I'm doing outreach emails, I very much try and keep everything separate. And so one thing that I've kind of heard is that you should only use an alternate domain, never a subdomain. But from what we've seen with testing this out ourselves with many thousands of emails, there is no negative impact on using a subdomain on a main domain, that it doesn't affect the deliverability on the main domain. But Michael points out it kind of does depend on the IP address of that email. So for alternate domains, domains are, in the grand scheme of things, relatively inexpensive. For $9, you can get website.net if you own website.com or .co or anything like that. If your website is multiple words, you could also hyphenate between those words and get the .com. Or we've also done things like go yourwebsite.com or get yourwebsite.com or yourwebsiteapp.com. And these sorts of different things can kind of give you some ideas for alternate domains to get. And for a subdomain, m.yourwebsite or outreach.yourwebsite or anything like that. A question I also get a lot is, can I use Gmail or Outlook's free accounts? From a deliverability perspective, for the most part, I've seen that Gmail and Outlook have decent deliverability, but from a business perspective, not a deliverability perspective, I would really recommend having using like company related branded domain. Um, I'm on the receiving end of a lot of cold emails, as I'm sure many of you are as well. And I get cold emails from random names at Gmail every day, or random name at Outlook. And those, just from my perspective as someone who gets these emails, I'm more suspicious of them, or less likely to want to work with someone if they're sending me emails from a Gmail or an Outlook, because it just doesn't look all that professional, and like it's clear that they're just spinning up as many outreach emails addresses as they can, and that it also probably signifies that uh, their outreach is not as targeted, which I think is an interesting kind of concept here. Is like if I get an email from someone from an at Gmail or something, uh, Robert, that's good. If I get an email from an at Gmail, and my impression is going to be that they somehow found or scraped me from a list, and their pitch to me is not specific to my brand or whatever it is they're looking for. Um, and historically, from my experience, uh, historically from my experience as well, the emails that I'm getting from people from Gmail and Outlook are not as good. So mentally on the receiving end, I'm gonna put people in that bucket, right? And so I think other businesses that you're cold emailing will as well. And a good point from Michael as well is there are more limited sending, lower sending limits from the free accounts as well. Um, I I got a bunch more questions here, and I'm going to save those for a little bit later. We will get to these. So how many email addresses can or should you use at a given domain? Um, I asked myself this, and I'm like, oh, that's a good question. But it's a common question that I get. A lot of the questions that I'm going to kind of throw out here are ones that I get on a more regular basis. Like, should I have one email per? Should I have one email per domain and just have multiple domains and one from each? Or can I have 2 to 5 email addresses at a single domain, and multiple domains? So overall, I think you can use multiple email addresses at the same domain, but I wouldn't exclusively rely on one domain. If you're going to be doing outreach at scale, you kind of want to protect yourself as best you can, so that, again, in the worst case scenario, if you are seeing low deliverability for a particular domain, that if that harms multiple email addresses, then you need to either rehabilitate those through a warm-up process, which takes them out of use for some time, or worst case, if they end up on these block lists, then you need to swap those out entirely. So overall, though, I think it really depends on the kind of volume you're looking to send. Are you looking to send are you looking to send a couple hundred emails a month, or a couple thousand emails a month? That's really kind of the main differentiator, I think. And if you have like specific questions about that later, I'm happy to talk about that later. But overall, it really depends on, I think, what the kind of volume that you're trying to send. One question that I had in the chat that I think is particularly interesting is the question of does one email provider over another get a better deliverability typically, or a better open rate? So we've been running tests because we've heard things from other people, but we always want to test this for ourselves. We want to make no assumptions, like just like how we ran our tests about subdomains and found that that didn't really have any negative effect. We also ran tests with different domains to see what kind of deliverability and open rates and reply rates they are getting. So the short answer is it might matter, and this is because every email service provider is different. If your email is with Google Workspace versus Microsoft 365 versus Zoho versus something else, each of these email providers has their own algorithms that determine whether an email from this particular person is going to go to spam or is going to go to the inbox, or in Google's case, go to like a categories folder. And while they all subscribe to block lists to see if certain email addresses are on a block list, determining whether your email address goes to the inbox or spam is up to each email provider. And so we've run tests to try and see, well, kind of all things being equal, does an email coming from a Gmail going to a Gmail have better deliverability than Gmail going to Microsoft, or Microsoft going to Gmail versus Microsoft? For the most part, our data shows that they're pretty similar. I think there is, though, a very, very slight edge to Microsoft from what we've been seeing with our data. And over time, with Boxword doing email warmup, we're going to get more and more data. And so as just kind of an initial matter, like what we've seen with samples of data is emails coming from inbox that's powered by Microsoft. They are getting better deliverability than emails from Gmail or Zoho. It is a relatively small percentage, not massive, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, it can make a difference. A slightly better open rate and reply rate, especially at a huge volume of outreach, is something to think about and weigh. I know, like sometimes, like when I'm thinking about like new outreach campaigns and new domains, I'm also like thinking in my head about costs, because like if I want to get a new email address with Gmail or Microsoft, they're like $6 or $8 per month, versus like Zoho, which is $12 a year or something like that. But given, I guess, overall the goals of what you're kind of looking to get from your cold outreach campaigns, I think that's, just a necessary kind of cost of doing business there. So that's what so next I want to talk about with email setup is email authentication. Basically, so it's a little technical here, but email authentication is basically something that you do to tell tell the email service providers that an email coming from your email address is legit and it's not spoofed or anything like that. There are 3 types of records that we care about. These are records that you'll, like, often when you set up a domain or add a mail to it through, Google Workspace or Microsoft or Zoho, they're going to ask you to edit your DNS records. And if you're not familiar, DNS records are basically wherever your domain was purchased or set up. This is not 100% true, but I just to summarize and keep it as simple as possible. You have in your domain, there are associated records for email, like they're called MX records. You have records that show where your website is on the internet. Those are A records. And there are email authentication related records. These are there are three types that are particularly important. There's SPF, DKIM, and DMARC records. The SPF record and the DKIM record, these are relevant to your email provider. So if you sign up for a Google Workspace account and you want to set up email through that, then they will ask, then, Gmail or Outlook or Zoho, they'll ask you to set up these specific records for SPF and DKIM. But the DMARC record is not specific to any provider. You can just set it up yourself in your domain. And there are on the internet DMARC generators, but I'm just going to show you some examples of these so that you kind of know what these all look like. And this is just an example of a DMARC record wizard thing. So SPF record, here are just some examples of what SPF records look like. In your DNS, basically you're going to create a TXT record, it's called. And then like the content is going to look something like this, depending on whatever email provider that you're using. And if you don't see any SPF records, then there is a problem. So like after this webinar, maybe like check your domain that you're doing outreach with, just to make sure that you have something that looks generally like this set up. Because if you skip it, then it's going to contribute negatively to your deliverability. DKIM records, these are some examples here. Like it looks something like gibberish, numbers, letters, things like that. Like you kind of see here, no idea what all this is, but it's another layer here for authentication that helps your deliverability. And the last thing is a DMARC record. It's just like a simple DMARC record to have is, this is an example here, but basically you can set parameters for what you want to do, what you want your email provider to do with suspicious looking emails, whether to reject them or quarantine them or anything like that. So those are kind of my points about setting up an email. If you think there's anything I might have missed or have questions about anything, please throw those in the Q&A or the chat. Next up, we're going to talk about overall best practices for outreach campaigns. So if you're doing cold outreach campaigns, there are things that you can do that'll contribute to either good or bad deliverability. The first thing, kind of the most maybe obvious thing that's relevant for your outreach campaigns is the contacts, the people that you're reaching out to. My first rule, don't buy lists of contacts. There are plenty of databases and directories out there or services where you can just buy a list of emails that are associated with businesses or in a certain industry or whatever. But I strongly recommend not buying these lists for a few reasons. One, the emails can be outdated, and you may end up just reaching out to an email that's going to bounce, which is why it's important to verify your lists. Even if you get this list and it's being sold to you as this is a brand, like this is a list of businesses or contacts in these roles in this industry, you have no idea where the data is that they got. So I strongly recommend not just not buying lists, and that'll save you frustration there. One other reason not to buy lists is because of spam traps. So email service providers and block list providers know that people can buy lists. So what they do is they will sneak bad emails onto these lists that they know are going to get scraped and that are going to get um, included in some people's outreach campaigns. But if you end up emailing that address, now this block list provider knows that you reached out to someone from a purchased list, and it's going to increase the likelihood that you end up with a block or anything like that. So very important that for any contacts that you are reaching out to in your outreach campaigns, that you verify each email, whether you're using like a verifier built into Postaga or any other third-party verification tool. So one other thing with email verification is another best practice is the kind of the response that you get when you verify emails are, all right, this email is either verified, it's rejected, or it's a catch-all email, meaning that when the verifier ran to try and check that particular email address, it didn't bounce, but it was like there was delay or timeout, or but it wasn't immediately rejected because the email server doesn't reject anything. So that's what a catch-all is. But if you email someone's name at this website and it's a catch-all and that person doesn't exist at that company, there is a chance that the email will bounce via a delayed bounce or something like that. So as a best practice, I would remove catch-alls emails from your outreach campaigns as well. Next thing is varying up your email text. If you're sending out a lot of cold emails, there are you can do things called like spin tax, which basically the aim is to reduce the similarity of the emails in your campaign. So like there's a spin tax tool built into Postaga. So if you're in your email template, you can basically rotate between different phrases. So instead of like in your greeting line, instead of saying just hello there or hello person's name, you can say hello, hi, aloha, greetings, whatever you want. And you can rotate between those, or you could have different sentences or phrases or things like that. And rotating between those will distinguish more the individual emails in your campaigns. Another example, and this is what it looks like in Postaga in the template, you have like a spin and then an end spin sort of brackets there with the two straight lines between the different phrases that you're going to be jumping between. Email sending habits. Well, if you're using an outreach platform like Postaga, not really something you need to worry about. The first kind of comment here is don't drop your emails in any sort of mass mail merge, or and especially don't use like an email marketing platform like MailChimp or something like that, where it's going to just send out all these emails to people immediately, because as a sending habit, that just looks suspicious. Like, what person is sending a non-marketing email to multiple people at once like this? So basically, your email sending habits should look natural, and so staggering your emails is a best practice. And also, don't send too many emails per day. There is a lot of debate on this, and different email providers have different sending limits. I know some people, as a rule, they'll say, I only want to send up to 50 emails per day per email address. Others will send up to 200 or 300 per day if their email provider allows for that. This is one thing that is where we're trying to get more data on ourselves to see, well, what are the real limits that you could push without running into any deliverability issues. And watching your numbers. Another thing is, in terms of like best practices for deliverability, 95% is good, and seeing that like if there's 5%, 5% don't reach, then that, I mean, in a perfect world your deliverability would be 100%. But if you're seeing that too many emails are bouncing, then it's bad. The more emails that bounce, the more likely that your overall deliverability is going to suffer for that. Average open rate, we have a lot of data on this. It's around 40%. If your open rate of your email campaign is below 40%, or it's consistently below 40%, then it looks like there are some issues of deliverability. And but if you're seeing a much better open rate, nice work. Not only is your deliverability good, but you've done a good job with your outreach campaign targeting as well. So next thing I want to talk about is email warmup. Another piece of the puzzle of improving our email deliverability here. So what is email warmup? Email warmup is basically a process to improve the deliverability of an email address, whether it's a brand new email or an email that's been in use regularly, or an email that is distressed and that's been in use for a while but is seeing decreased open rates and deliverability. There are many things that can affect this, but basically the reason that this can happen, the reason that you could end up seeing bad deliverability, is because of things like you start with a brand new email and you just start sending like 50 to 200 emails a day, and right out the gate, that's going to look suspicious to Gmail, Microsoft, Zoho, and all the providers. Because if someone starts brand new at a company or starts a new domain, most often the case is they don't just immediately start sending out 50 emails a day that get a 5% response rate. Gmail and Microsoft can see this. They can see that what your recipients are responding to, and that all can look suspicious. So what email warmup does is it basically takes your email address and it mimics normal email sending patterns that increase over time. And so with a service like Boxword, for example, we have a network of email addresses that the platform controls. And so if you connect an email on day one, you may send 2 or 4 emails to other email addresses that are using the platform, and a certain percentage of the recipients will reply to those emails. And if your emails are landing in people's spam folders, it'll move those emails out of spam folders into the main inbox, or it might mark the emails as important, or have ongoing conversation with these emails. And this sort of behavior, looking more natural and typical of what you'd expect of an inbox, over time, it warms up, quote unquote, your email and makes you more able to send more outreach emails, and better ensures that your emails are landing in people's regular inboxes. Because when Gmail sees that, one of our users got an email from this person, but it landed in spam, they took it out of spam and put it in their regular inbox. So this is telling us that this person is a legit sender, So let's send their emails to the inbox now and not spam folders. So it's an entirely automated process that helps improve the deliverability of your emails. And like if you have an established email, chances are your email sending patterns and your reply rates are lower than, well, your reply rates are probably much lower than a typical person using an email address for business purposes, let's say. Um, like I mentioned, like from cold outreach, we see the typical open rate is 40%, and a reply rate can be, well, it can be anywhere from 1% to 20% or more, depending on how effective and targeted your campaigns are. But even so, like those numbers are not going to be as good as the open rates and reply rates from colleagues who know you already. So because of that, throwing on an email warmup can have it so that you send emails to other people in the network and they reply to those emails and it looks much more natural. And so that can help maintain good deliverability for you. Yeah, so the basic theme here is it increases deliverability. If you're just starting out with a brand new email, some people will do warm up for a few weeks to a month. I know some people will do warm up for 2 months, but in general, like our typical warm up cadence is basically 4 weeks, going from a few emails a day up to 50 emails a day. So I want to show a quick demonstration of what warm up looks like in our platform here. So let me share this with you. 1 sec. All right. All right, quick thumbs up or something if you see my screen here. Nope. All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, so basically how kind of our Boxword platform works is you sign up, you connect an email address, it's going to ask you for your email provider. Kind of the 3 main ones that we see people using are Google, Microsoft, and Zoho, or you can use SMTP and IMAP to connect anything basically. And it's going to ask for your email name, the SMTP host, and IMAP. And these are settings that'll be unique to your provider. So like, yeah, if you're using like Rackspace or SES or something like that, you have to make sure for one that you have SMTP and IMAP enabled, and then you'll add your username, password information here, and that'll connect your email. So I'm going to do one real quick now. I just got an email for this occasion, and let's see. I'm going to drop in my email, and for one particular thing for our setup here with connecting a Google Workspace or Gmail email is to be able to connect, we have to have 2-factor and an app password, which I've already enabled for this one. So then I'll connect this email. Then it's going to ask me some information. And the reason that it's asking this is so that it can kind of better tailor the email sequence and cadence and all of that to the people that we're reaching out to. And initial question here is this is what is this email address, so we can set a cadence for you. Is it a brand new email? Is it an existing email with good deliverability or bad deliverability, or has it been blacklisted? Or do you want to configure this manually and do something and have a kind of schedule or sequence completely unique to whatever you want to be? But we've got these pre-built, and so I'll do like this automatic warm-up routine for a brand new email address. And so kind of what you see here, that what it's setting up is that like the percentage rate of basically it's going to send out emails to other emails in this network. It's going to ramp up slowly over time. And we have a target for what percentage of the emails are going to get a reply or back and forth conversation, or what percentage of them are going to get marked as important if they're in Gmail, because Gmail has the important tag for them. And I'll update that and save that, and then it's running. And so then basically all of this works on its own. You basically shouldn't notice anything. So if I check this Gmail inbox, I'm going to notice that there is a folder now that exists there called Keep Warm. And in that folder is all outreach, all of the warm up related correspondence with other inboxes in our network here. And like you can kind of go about your business, and either like if it's a brand new email address, you could leave it alone. And if if you're not using it, you might just want to not touch it for a few weeks, let the warm up do its thing, and then once it's kind of warmed up, then you can start sending your outreach campaigns. And this, greatly increases the likelihood that your emails wind up in people's inboxes. So let's see if I have a good example. Not this one's new. So like I can get data to see like over time where the emails are landing, whether they're going to in inbox or categories or spam or things like that. I think this account I just created is kind of brand new. So that's all, so it's all, like I said, it's all brand new. So don't have a lot of data on this one, but I can get insight to see how deliverability looks like in like different inboxes. What's my deliverability look like for this to Google, Microsoft, Zoho, or others, or anything like that. Stuff like that. And yeah, that's basically what like the entire process of setting up what setting up email warmup is. And like basically I'd recommend that be part of really any time that you are starting to do outreach. Having email warmup kind of in place ensures that your open rates are going to be higher, and that you're going to get better deliverability from that. So moving on, let me know if there are any kind of questions about that. Actually, one question that I have that I'm going to throw to the group now, I'm curious about, are you doing any email warmup yourselves? The options are yes, no, or no, but I have in the past. All right, and I'll close this in. Perfect. All right, so about 36% yes, 45% no, and 18% no, but I have in the past. So I guess, a little over half either have or have done email warmup in the past. I guess if you have in the past, I guess I would, if you have email outreach that's going out now, I would strongly recommend having your email still in some form of warm-up cadence, whether it's just like to maintain, because like as I mentioned before, even if you set up your email and you warmed it up, over time, as email providers are seeing like what your reply rates are and open rates are, and how those kind of deviate from the norm from regular business emails, that can affect your deliverability. So I do usually recommend, I do recommend that any emails that you have that you are actively using are in some sort of warm up cadence there. Next steps here, yeah, kind of where to go from here. A few resources and things like that to share. The first thing is, if you haven't checked this out yet, we are having an offer that gives you basically free access to Boxword for life for up to 5 email addresses. Basically, if you sign up for a Postaga Pro plan, it ends up being $49 for the first month, and with that, you get a lifetime pack of 5 emails in Boxword. Now, questions I get about this is, well, what does that mean? 5 emails? Does it mean 5 individual emails? And then if I've used them, that's it. And I can only use those specific 5 emails. The answer is no. So if you wanted to, you could like start with 5 brand new emails, warm them up, and then swap them out and warm up 5 brand new emails and warm them up in perpetuity. You could do that feasibly. Like I said, though, I generally recommend that even your emails that are actively in use and warmed up are in some form of maintenance routine in email warmup, just to keep the deliverability good. And so that'll get you a 5-pack of emails in Boxword for life, and you can get that at postaga.com/boxword-lifetime-deal. Separately, if you just want the 5-pack of emails for life, since this is a brand new product that we launched, it's 40. You can get $49 and get a 5-pack of warm-up emails for life, and you can do multiple quantities. So this is something that we're only doing for a limited time, as we've kind of just launched and introduced Boxword. So like if you want 50 emails forever, that would be a quantity of 10, but you can get an unlimited number, as many as you want. For as many email addresses as you could conceive that you are using or would be using in your outreach. Main difference between these is with the Postaga deal, you also get access to the Postaga outreach platform to send outreach campaigns for a month. Comes with email finding, contact finding included, and can send your email campaigns out. So that's so kind of next question I have that I kind of throw here at the end, just so I know and I can follow up. If you want us to follow up with you after this webinar individually, yes or no, let us know, and we can, and I'll reach out to you personally to get in touch. So I'll leave this open for a few more seconds. The poll is now open, so if you could please throw in an answer there. We'll close it shortly and then get to the next thing. All right, 10 seconds left. If you haven't responded to the poll yet, I'll close it in a few seconds. Thank you so much for that. And I'll close that now. So next question, next part is going through Q&A. So I got a lot of questions here. I'm excited to answer these. But if you got to drop, I know we're getting close to the hour. I'll answer a few of these questions. And if you have any more questions after this, please feel free to reach out to us at, you can reach out to me personally at andy@postaga.com or support@postaga.com or support@boxword.com. We can answer your questions there. So next, so I guess questions now. I'll get through, we'll go through these. One question was, what platform should we use, G Suite or Microsoft? Or should I use a dedicated IP? Like I mentioned before, for the most part, it doesn't really matter, though we've seen a slight edge to Microsoft. Should you use a dedicated IP? Um, I don't think that it is necessary. Um, um, Next question is, I see that you're like marketing emails come from newsletter at Postaga. Isn't that your core domain? So yes, but those are marketing emails that we're using our marketing automation platform with, um, which we keep kind of completely separate. And this is like important for anyone who's doing cold outreach and email marketing to your existing lists. Neither email marketing platforms nor outreach platforms should be doing the other's function. We use a specific platform for our email marketing to our subscribers and to people who've opted into our lists. And that's where our newsletter comes from. Our outreach emails, we use the Postaga platform for, and we would never use I would never use a MailChimp or Drift or ActiveCampaign or HubSpot or anything like that for outreach. And sorry, I wouldn't use I wouldn't use MailChimp or anything like that for outreach, but I wouldn't use Postaga for sending like marketing emails. They are both meant for two very kind of different functions. Um, Um, let's see. One question is, I always use a bulk server like a MailChimp or Amazon SES. So is it better to just use your domain SMTP? So I would say that like, MailChimp I would absolutely not use. Amazon SES you can possibly use. But in terms of like practicality, but also the fact that like it may all be on the same server, to kind of protect yourself from the worst case scenario, you may not want to use the same IP address server for multiple domains. You say, ask, is it better to just send using your domain SMTP? Yeah, so like the most common thing that we see is using SMTP. So like, yeah, getting an email through Google Workspace or Microsoft or Zoho or whatever, and then setting it up, and then connecting that to your outreach platform. But yeah, I know some people sending great quantities of emails might use something like Amazon SES or SendGrid or Mailgun or something like that. One question from Nick is, what does open actually mean? If my email is in my Outlook inbox in preview mode, is it open? Robert says yes. I about this specific instance case, I am not positive. I think if it shows up in the preview, it does count as an open. I am not sure. Michael says preview does count as an open because, and this is a good point, which that open tracking is done by a tracking pixel that is added to added to each email, and if the pixel is activated, then it knows that it is opened. However, a point that Michael in the comments makes is that Apple blocks this now as a default. So emails from and like email provider or providers that do like email marketing or and anything that tracks email opens is trying to figure out, well, how do we, like, what do we count this as? We count it as as an open, or do we count it or not, because it's going to affect the open rate. And like the common way that that providers try, like, or marketing platforms try and deal with this now, is that they just separate the emails that they know are going to Apple devices and don't count those in the open rate. But sometimes, depending on the provider, it can't, like, based on Apple blocking that, it can skew your open rate. So those kind of are, I realize it's after the hour now. So I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I guess, yeah, to kind of wrap things up here for today, thank you everyone for joining us for this session. Don't forget to grab your lifetime codes for for Boxword, and check out our lifetime deal with Postaga as well. I'll be sending the recording to everybody, so that'll be coming through within the next day. You should see that. So thanks everybody, and yeah, please feel free, get in touch if you have any questions at all. Thank you.